The divorce papers are in his hand, signed, sealed, and ready to destroy her. Arthur lunges for the courier's bag, fingers clawing at the leather as the bike roars to life. One swing of the courier's fist sends him crashing into the gravel, blood hot on his lip. He shoves the envelope back inside just as the motorcycle peels away. Victory. Then he steps inside and sees it. The lottery ticket in Claire's shaking hands. $50 million. And he just signed away every right to it. The air leaves his lungs. The woman he just legally severed himself from is now the wealthiest person in the county. His plan worked. Too well. The gravel crunched under Arthur's loafers, a rhythmic grinding that echoed the friction in his chest. Dust billowed, coating the polished leather in a fine, gray powder. Mike leaned against the idling van, the engine's vibration rattling the rusted fenders. The scent of burnt diesel and damp cardboard hung heavy in the humid morning air. Arthur's fingers twitched against the thick cream envelope. This rectangle of paper represented his liberation, the final severance from a marriage that had soured like forgotten milk. He reached the courier, the heat from the van's radiator radiating against his thighs. "Mike, you have the priority pouch for the downtown circuit?" Arthur's voice held a forced steadiness, though his pulse hammered against his collar. He adjusted his glasses, the rimless frames biting into the bridge of his nose. He had checked the tag on his shirt this morning, number 14, the sequence was holding. If he could just get this document into the system, the architecture of his new life would be structurally sound. The courier adjusted his cap, a smudge of grease streaking his forehead. "Yeah, Mr. Sterling. Leaving in 2 minutes. Why?" Arthur slid the envelope into the open maw of Mike's delivery bag, burying it beneath a stack of glossy catalogs. "It's the divorce decree. Signed, witnessed, and ready for the 10 a.m. filing deadline. It needs to disappear into that bag before anyone sees me handing it over." He felt the rough canvas of the bag against his palm, a coarse reality compared to the smooth, calculated dreams he'd been weaving for months. Mike let out a dry whistle, the sound sharp against the drone of the engine. "Cutting it close, aren't we?" "Precision, Mike. It beats desperation every time." Arthur patted the bag. He needed to be sure. He reached back in, his fingers grazing the corner of the envelope one last time, verifying the seal with a frantic, tactile obsession. The paper felt cold, almost clinical. He couldn't let it go without being absolutely certain the flap was bonded, the ink dry, the signature unassailable. Suddenly, Mike's posture shifted. The courier's eyes narrowed, tracking Arthur's hand as it dove back into the depths of the bag. To Mike, who had spent his life being pushed around by men in white shirts, this didn't look like precision. It looked like a snatch and grab. "Hey, hands off the cargo!" Mike barked. He lunged forward, his massive chest a wall of denim and muscle. Arthur didn't pull back. "I just need to check the seal, Mike. It's a matter of—" Before he could finish, Mike's heavy, grease-stained fist swung in a wide arc. Arthur ducked, the wind of the blow whistling past his ear, but the courier's momentum carried him forward. They collided on the gravel, a tangle of limbs and gasps. The scent of wood smoke and old sweat from Mike's jacket filled Arthur's nostrils. He felt a sharp stone bite into his knee as they rolled. "Get off me!" Arthur hissed, his predatory instincts taking over. He used his forearm to bar Mike's throat, pinning the larger man against the side of the van. The rusted metal groaned under their weight. For a second, the world was nothing but the heat of the radiator and the frantic thud of two hearts out of sync. Arthur's glasses slid down his nose, but he didn't let go until he saw the bag was still secure. the envelope tucked safely inside the inner pocket where he'd shoved it during the scuffle. "It's in," Arthur panted, releasing his grip. "It's done. Just go." Mike scrambled up, his face a mask of bewildered rage. He wiped a streak of gravel dust from his cheek and spat into the dirt. "You're crazy, Sterling. You know that? Stone cold crazy." He didn't wait for an answer. He hopped onto his heavy motorcycle parked beside the van, the engine roaring to life with a bone-shaking thud. With a spray of pebbles, he tore down the driveway, the courier bag bouncing against his hip. Arthur stood alone, his chest heaving. He looked down at his shirt. A smudge of gray dirt marred the pristine white of the sleeve. He felt a spike of pure, icy panic. The sequence was broken. The dirt was a flaw, a crack in the foundation. He needed to change. He needed to get inside, wash his hands, and find shirt 15 before the world realized he was vulnerable. He turned toward the house, the silence of the Ohio morning suddenly feeling heavy, like a lid closing over a box. He stepped through the heavy oak door, the air-conditioned chill of the foyer striking him like a physical blow. The house smelled of lemon wax and the faint, floral perfume Claire favored, a scent that usually signaled her quiet, submissive presence. But as he crossed the threshold into the living room, the silence was gone, replaced by the frantic, high-pitched chatter of a television announcer. Claire was standing in the center of the room. She wasn't wearing one of her usual oversized sweaters. She looked small, almost fragile, silhouetted against the flickering blue light of the screen. Her arms weren't crossed. Her hands were trembling, clutching a small slip of thermal paper. "Arthur," she whispered. Her voice was a thin wire, vibrating with a frequency he didn't recognize. He didn't look at her face at first. He looked at the TV. The screen showed a series of glowing spheres, each marked with a number. Samuel decided to stay silent, his mind already calculating the next move. He watched the screen, then looked back at Claire. This was the moment of his greatest competence. He had filed the papers. He was legally protected. He had stripped her of the house, the accounts, the future. He felt a surge of confident, cold relief. He had won the game before she even knew the board was set. "What is it, Claire? I have a busy morning." He kept his tone clinical, the voice of a man in total control. Claire held out the ticket. "The drawing, the numbers. They just called them." Arthur stepped closer, his eyes scanning the slip. 14, 22, 31, 09, 11. The Powerball was 07. He looked back at the screen. The numbers matched perfectly. A golden banner scrolled across the bottom of the screen. "Single winning ticket sold in Dayton." Estimated jackpot. $50 million. A warmth he hadn't felt in years flooded his chest. 50 million. His mind whirred like a high-speed processor. This changed the variables, but it didn't break the equation. With that kind of capital, his offshore accounts wouldn't just be a safety net. They would be an empire. He reached out to take the ticket, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Claire, honey, this is a miracle. We're going to be fine. We're going to be more than fine." Claire didn't hand him the ticket. She pulled it back, her eyes meeting his. For the first time in a decade, she didn't look away. There was no fear in her gaze, only a hollow, echoing clarity. "We?" she asked. The word was a soft inquiry, a ripple in a still pond. "Of course we," Arthur said, his voice dropping into a soothing, paternal register. "Think of what this means for our future." The crack appeared then. Claire didn't smile back. She didn't cry. She simply looked at the clock on the wall. It was 10:04 a.m. "The courier, Arthur," she said. "I saw him from the window. I saw the scuffle. I saw you give him the envelope." Arthur's heart skipped a beat. A cold prickle danced across his skin. That was just business, Claire. Boring legal paperwork. It can be undone. A quick phone call, a correction. "No," Claire interrupted. The softness was gone, replaced by the cold, hard ring of a bell. "I know what was in that envelope. I've known for weeks. You filed for a backdated separation. You included a pre-existing debt clause. You signed away your rights to any assets acquired after the date of the filing." She took a step back, maintaining her 3-foot dead zone. The blue light of the TV reflected in her eyes, making them look like cold glass. "The filing date you chose was yesterday, Arthur. You wanted to make sure I got nothing from the sale of the house. You wanted to leave me with the debt while you took the cash." She held up the lottery ticket. "But the law is a symmetrical system, isn't it? You said that once. If you aren't responsible for my life as of yesterday, then you aren't entitled to my luck as of today." The truth hit Arthur like a physical blow to the solar plexus. The room seemed to tilt. The $50 million wasn't a shared victory. It was a wall, and he was on the wrong side of it. By being smart, by being precise, he had built a cage and unlocked himself out of paradise. He had spent $10,000 in legal fees to ensure he didn't have to share $100,000 in equity, only to forfeit $25 million in a single, desperate heartbeat. "Claire, listen to me," he gasped, his knees feeling weak. "That document, it hasn't been time-stamped yet. It's just paper in a bag. Mike is still on the road. I can stop him. We can tear it up." He lunged for his keys on the sideboard, the metal cold and biting into his palm. He didn't look back. He couldn't. He burst through the door, the Ohio heat hitting him like a furnace. He scrambled into his SUV, the leather seat searing his thighs through his thin trousers. "It's a misprint," he screamed at the windshield as he slammed the car into reverse. "It has to be a misprint." He tore out of the driveway, his tires screaming against the asphalt. He had to find Mike. He had to stop that bag. The world was no longer a sequence of numbered shirts and calculated risks. It was a race against a clock that had no hands, a desperate scramble to undo the very perfection he had spent a lifetime constructing. The interstate was a blur of gray and shimmering heat. Arthur pushed the SUV to 80, his eyes darting to every motorcycle he passed. The vibration of the road traveled through his teeth, a low-frequency hum of anxiety. He reached Elm Street, the shortcut to the processing center, but his heart sank. The road was a graveyard of orange plastic. Construction. A massive yellow backhoe sat idling in the center of the lane, its hydraulic arm dripping dark oil onto the churned earth. The air was thick with the scent of scorched dust and hot tar. A man in a neon orange vest stood in the middle of the road, holding a stop sign with a grip that looked permanent. Arthur slammed on his brakes, the SUV skidding to a halt inches from a row of traffic cones. He rolled down the window, the noise of a pile driver nearby slamming into his skull like a hammer. "Move it," Arthur yelled, his voice cracking. "I have a legal emergency. Get that thing out of the way." Gary, the flagman, didn't move. He was a thin man, his skin weathered like old parchment. He didn't look at Arthur. He looked at the horizon, his lips moving in a silent, rhythmic whisper. "Sorry, little guy," Gary murmured, nudging a displaced cone back into line with his boot. "Didn't mean to bump you. Sorry." Arthur threw the door open and leapt out. The heat off the asphalt was 105 degrees, softening the soles of his loafers. "Hey, I'm talking to you." He grabbed Gary by the shoulder, spinning him around. The flagman flinched, his eyes wide and unfocused. "Sir, you can't be out here," Gary said, his voice a shaky monotone. "Active excavation, safety protocols. I'm sorry, really sorry." "I don't care about your protocols. A man on a motorcycle just came through here." "Where did he go?" Gary blinked, his gaze drifting to the stop sign. "The biker? He went around the detour, High Street. But you can't go that way. The asphalt is wet. You'll ruin the finish. I'd be so sorry if you ruined the finish." Arthur felt a surge of predatory rage. He didn't have time for apologies to inanimate objects. He shoved Gary aside, the man stumbling back into a pile of gravel. Arthur scrambled back into the SUV and floored it, swerving around the backhoe. The heavy machine began to reverse, its backup beeper a piercing, rhythmic shriek. The massive tires churned the mud, sending a spray of grit against Arthur's windshield. He didn't stop. He cleared the trench by inches, the frame of the SUV scraping against a jagged piece of rebar. He didn't look back to see Gary frantically apologizing to the disturbed dirt. He reached the gas station on the corner of High and Main. The smell of spilled diesel and cheap wintergreen air freshener hit him as he pulled in. And there it was, the heavy motorcycle. Mike was standing by the pump, his back to Arthur, his helmet resting on the seat. He was checking his tactical watch, tapping the glass with a rhythmic, obsessive precision. Arthur didn't even park. He killed the engine and sprinted across the concrete, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Mike, stop, don't move!" The courier turned, his eyes widening as he recognized the man who had tackled him an hour ago. He instinctively stepped back, his hand hovering near the heavy courier bag slung over his shoulder. "You again? Back off, Sterling. I'm calling the cops." "Wait." Arthur reached into his pocket and pulled out a wad of hundreds, the emergency cash he kept hidden in his desk. $5,000, right now. Just give me the bag. I'll tell your office you were robbed. I'll sign a statement. Just let me have the envelope." He held the money out, the green bills fluttering in the hot breeze. He felt a moment of desperate hope. Everyone had a price. Mike was a courier, a man who lived on tips and grit. 5,000 was a year of motorcycle payments. Mike looked at the money. Then he looked at Arthur. A slow, grim smile spread across his face. "You think this is about the paper, don't you?" Mike asked. Arthur paused, the money still extended. "What do you mean?" Mike reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a ruggedized tablet. The screen was bright, showing a digital log with a green checkmark. "Company policy changed last month, Mr. Sterling. Real-time verification. The moment I put that envelope in my bag, back at your house, I scanned the barcode on the filing sleeve. The GPS coordinates, the timestamp, and a high-res photo of the signature page were uploaded to the court's server instantly." He tapped the screen. "That proof of possession is already in the judicial queue. The physical papers? They're just a backup, a formality. Even if I gave you that bag, the record of the filing and its exact time is already locked in stone." Arthur's hand dropped. The bills slipped from his fingers, scattering across the oil-stained concrete. The world seemed to go silent, the only sound the rhythmic drip, drip, drip of a leaky pump. "The server," Arthur whispered. "It's already there." "Logged at 9:47 a.m., Mike said, his voice hard. 13 minutes before the drawing. You're a perfectionist, right? Well, the system is perfect too, and it says you're officially a single man." Mike clicked his helmet shut, the plastic teeth biting together with a definitive snap. He swung his leg over the bike and roared away, leaving Arthur standing in the shimmering heat, surrounded by $5,000 in useless paper. The drive back to the city center was a funeral procession. Arthur felt like a ghost inhabiting a suit of clothes. He reached the courthouse, the sharp angles of the glass and steel reflecting the midday sun like a weapon. He saw a familiar car in the lot, a black luxury sedan, its chrome polished to a mirror finish. Robert Miller, Claire's brother, was stepping out. Robert, the man who hummed funeral dirges while dismantling lives. Arthur intercepted him at the base of the massive stone steps. "Robert, you have to stop this. Claire, she's not thinking straight. The lottery win, it's overwhelmed her." Robert stopped, his posture so rigid he looked like he'd swallowed a ruler. He adjusted his silk tie, his eyes cold behind his glasses. "She's thinking with remarkable clarity, Arthur. In fact, she's been thinking clearly for years. She just waited for you to provide the exit ramp." Robert began to hum, a low, vibrating melody that Arthur recognized with a shiver. Chopin's Marche Funèbre, the Death March. "The server is down, Arthur," Robert said, interrupting his own tune. "Maintenance, a 10-minute window. The digital filing is stuck in the buffer. It won't be official until the physical documents are hand-delivered and the system restarts." A spark of life returned to Arthur's eyes. A window. A glitch in the perfection. "Where's the courier?" Arthur asked, his voice a frantic rasp. "He's coming. But it doesn't matter. I have the power of attorney to ensure the filing is prioritized the moment the lights come back on." Arthur didn't stay to listen. He scanned the plaza, his predatory eyes searching for the flash of a motorcycle helmet. And then he saw it. Mike was pulling up to the curb, the heavy bike leaning into the turn. This was it. The final stand. Arthur lunged. He didn't care about the lawyers, the security guards, or the crowd of people gathered for the afternoon sessions. He ran across the burning asphalt, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Mike saw him coming and tried to swing the bag around his body, but Arthur was faster. He tackled the courier on the bottom step, the two men tumbling onto the hard stone. "Give it to me!" Arthur screamed, his fingers clawing at the canvas. The crowd erupted in shouts. Camera shutters clicked, a swarm of metallic insects. Arthur ignored them. He felt the rough texture of the envelope. He pulled, the stitching of the bag groaning. Rip, the envelope came free. Arthur scrambled backward, clutching the cream-colored paper to his chest. He had it. He had the physical proof. If he could just destroy it, if he could just keep it out of the building for another 5 minutes, the digital record would be a ghost without a body. But then, a heavy hand fell on his shoulder. Stephen Davis, the courthouse security guard, didn't hesitate. He didn't ask questions. He saw a man in a white shirt, now stained with sweat and grease, attacking a courier. He used Arthur's momentum against him, spinning him around and pinning him face down against the cold marble of the steps. "Drop it. Now." Stephen's voice was a bark of command. Arthur's cheek was pressed against the stone. He could smell the bleach used to scrub the stairs. He saw a single red, high-heeled shoe sitting a few feet away, a bizarre, silent witness to his collapse. I have to stop it." Arthur wheezed. The envelope was snatched from his hand. Not by Stephen, but by a woman with glasses on a chain. Jennifer Thompson, the court clerk. "Is this the Sterling filing?" she asked, her voice ending in a nervous upward lilt. "The one the wife called about, you know?" She looked at the papers, then at the clock inside the lobby. The hands weren't moving, but a soft beep echoed through the speakers. The system was back online. "She called ahead, you know," Jennifer said, nodding vigorously. Said her husband might try to interfere with the delivery. She requested an immediate manual override to finalize the timestamp. You know? She turned and walked into the building, the glass doors sliding shut behind her. Arthur lay on the steps, the handcuffs biting into his wrists. He felt the weight of the officer's knee in his back, but he didn't struggle. He watched through the glass as Jennifer stamped the paper. Filed. 12:01 p.m. The sequence was finished. The math was complete. An hour later, Arthur sat in a dim holding cell. The walls were a sickly, calming pink that felt like it was shrinking. A single fluorescent light flickered every 4 seconds, a strobe effect that made his pulse jump. The door buzzed open. Robert Miller stepped in, carrying a leather briefcase. He didn't sit down. He stood with his back to the door, his eyes scanning the room for threats. The assault charges are being processed, Robert said, and the reckless endangerment. But that's the least of your concerns. He opened the briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. I've been doing some digging, Arthur. Forensic accounting is a hobby of mine. I found the offshore account in the Caymans, the one you've been seeding with missing insurance premiums for 3 years. Arthur felt the blood drain from his face. How? You're a perfectionist, Arthur, but you're also a creature of habit. You use the same numerical sequence for your account passwords that you use for your shirts. It took David Harris exactly 20 minutes to crack the vault. Robert leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. The IRS has been notified. The account is frozen. You have no liquid assets left to pay for a defense, let alone the bail. He reached back into the bag and pulled out a small, brightly colored slip of paper. The lottery ticket. Claire wanted me to show you this, Robert said. Arthur stared at the ticket. Why? To gloat? No. Robert's expression softened just for a second. She wanted you to see the back. Look at the gift to line. Arthur squinted in the flickering light. There, in Claire's neat, looping handwriting, was a name. Arthur Sterling. She bought it for your birthday, Arthur, Robert said. She was going to give it to you tonight. She wanted to tell you that she knew things had been hard, that she wanted to start over. She was going to use the win to pay off your debts and move to Chicago, just like you always dreamed. He tucked the ticket back into his pocket. But then she found the divorce papers in your desk. She saw the date. She saw the pre-existing debt clause. She realized that while she was looking for a way to save you, you were already halfway out the door with a knife in your hand. The truth hit Arthur like a physical blow. He hadn't just lost $50 million. He had lost the only person who had ever truly seen him. Not as a ghost in white, not as a predator, but as a man worth saving. He had cheated himself. I'll sign the plea deal, Arthur whispered, his voice breaking. Whatever it takes. Just tell her I'm sorry. Robert didn't answer. He just started humming again, that low, mournful dirge, as he turned and walked out of the cell. The final decree was signed in a sterile room that smelled of industrial bleach. Arthur surrendered his remaining savings, his car, and his interest in the house to pay for Mike's medical bills and the legal fees. It was a total liquidation, a bankruptcy of the soul. He stood on the courthouse sidewalk, clutching the final decree in a hand that wouldn't stop shaking. The Ohio sky was a flat, gray weight. The horizon stretching forever. A long black limousine pulled up to the curb. The door opened, and Claire stepped out. She wasn't wearing an oversized sweater. She wore a tailored suit of deep, vibrant blue. No red, just the color of a clear sky. She didn't look at him. She didn't have to. She walked past him, her head held high, and stepped into the car. Arthur watched the limousine pull away, its tires whispering against the asphalt. He looked down at his feet. The gravel was gone, replaced by the smooth, indifferent concrete of the city. He was free. The marriage was over. The debts were settled. He had exactly what he had asked for in that cream-colored envelope. He stood alone in the quiet, a man in a white shirt with no number on the tag, realizing that the most dangerous thing in the world isn't a lack of control, it's getting exactly what you calculated.